Good day, everyone. All right, let me pull up a few things here and share out this link. Hope you're all doing well. I think it's going to be a very interesting week on the charts. All right, I'm going to share this in the Discord and share it on Twitter. Happy Easter to you as well, Patrick. Just give me another 30 seconds here. We'll get into the charts. All right, so we're going to look at a few ideas. The main idea that I'm thinking about right now is just the extreme bullish order flow that we're starting to develop. Doesn't mean price can't go lower locally, but over the weekend here, from an order flow perspective, I definitely want to shift my views to more bullish ideas into all-time highs. And we're going to look at some of those ideas on the charts. Give me 1 second, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, excuse me. We're going to look at some of those ideas and kind of the development of my thought process here. But I would just want to clarify a couple things here as we get started. Bullish absorption that we're witnessing here in order flow is a technical term. So it's not my opinion that this is a bullish divergence between CVD and price. It's just a fact. And so even though I've had some different ideas for price action here, I'm just taking that fact into account. Does not mean price can't go lower, it can't break down. It just, to me, shifts the probability in favor of price going higher, even if we see lower locally, and we're going to look at some of those ideas through all-time highs rather than a bigger rejection from here. So anyways, we're going to take a look at some of those technical ideas and what my view is here. And we're going to start on the weekly chart. So along that I really will be interested in taking if I get the opportunity. And we're going to look at the simple structure of this, and then the more complex structure of this is just taking this weekly low, our previous weekly candle low, and reclaiming it. It's just a very simple trigger, and we're going to talk about why the targets are up towards 77, 78,000, and why I would be looking for a bigger rejection off of that, and as crazy as it may sound, back into potentially the $50,000 region. So I'll make that case, and I'll kind of explain how I would trade around it personally. So what we're going to be looking at is this idea of a flat forming here as a correction. And this idea has been something I've been looking at for a little while. In fact, it's something that I've considered since here on the chart as a possibility. And so we're going to look at why this is such a compelling idea. Now, of course, this was drawn out at another time. It's such a compelling idea from a structure perspective, and it's such a compelling idea from an order flow perspective. So we're going to just go back to when we were at our all-time highs at 73,000 before we rejected back to 60,000. And at the time, so this is back over 2 weeks ago. This was my update in the Discord in the high time frame levels channel. And I said, I was asked by a member to share the Elliott wave count I referenced, as I said something like we would expect a wave 4 at some point. The reason is this very strong move from our breakout has the look of a wave 3, typically the strongest and most impulsive wave. The issue is we have all we have right now is an impulse straight up, so it's hard to say where the wave 3 ends or might end. All we can really do is keep an eye out for signs of weakness, and more importantly, prepare to long wave 4 ideas into a wave 5. And then I shared some examples that day that there's no way to describe what this correction could look like until we start getting more information. So I said we could get a variation of a flat, which has in here this first pullback, the push up to this maybe 77, 78K region. Remember, this is before we put in the 60K rejection, and then back down to 50K. Maybe we get a zigzag, maybe we get some variation of a triangle. There's many, but we don't have any structure. Price is just at all-time highs here at $73,000. At $73,000, we started to see signs of weakness and some bearishness in order flow. So I took that $73,000 short, and the main levels for targets here were back down into this 60K region and this $64,000 region. Now, of course, I shared this on Twitter. People, think it at the time at 73,000. The idea that price could come back down to 60K is crazy, but of course we did. And at this time, this is on the 19th, still a couple weeks ago, I said, this is just my high time frame updates channel. Not that there weren't other ideas and other time frames. I said, still need some more corrective structure to form to draw some strong conclusions. But as we get something like an expanded flat for a wave 4 would be a fun way to get continuation. And what I mean by fun is it would be probably very nice to trade. Lots of great short opportunities, lots of great long opportunities. And this was the idea, right? Coming down into this region of $60,000, pushing up to 77,000, back down to 50,000. So there's been a bit of an evolution of this idea where even at $73,000, I'm already thinking about what an expanded flat would look like here. And there were other variations of structure that were worth looking at, but this one to me was always interesting, but now based on order flow, I think it's even more interesting. And some of that new data we've gotten over the last few days. But the idea would be that we are in the midst of forming our wave 4 retracement that could go deeper, but we're going to look at some variations of a flat. All right, so first we're going to go to these expanded flat ideas. I have some in folders that I drew at the time. One, this is that, excuse me, this is that chart that I shared at 73K, just saying, these are the important ideas. If price starts, this is meant to say breaking, not being, breaking the ascending structure down, we could run these 4 lows, very important level. First, that's where we bounced off to the tick, and this was the structure I was looking at 73K. So very important ideas. I shared this on Twitter as well. Of course, it's funny because I say this often, but some of the ideas that are going to get, I guess, the most negative reactions or mocked the most, oftentimes end up being much more likely, right? For whatever reason, people think it's impossible that price ever does this at the time. But the idea was looking for an expanded flat, but there's different flat variations. So an expanded flat would see us continuing a move up into this 77K region, and we're looking for the internal structure to complete. And so something like this, some of these are old levels, something like this, down, expanded flat, probably looking for shorts up there, but looking for a long up into that. And then if we get the expanded variation, looking for a move down into this 50K region. Let's look at this on the weekly chart. Let's just look at how compelling this structure is. Well, first we'll start on the daily chart. So the idea would be come in, take this daily low, make our move up to the 77K region, and then just come and retest these impulse lows at 50K. This is just a very clear horizontal technical level. Looks even more compelling structurally, I think, on the weekly chart, to just come take this weekly candle low, have the impulse up to 77K, and then come retest these weekly candles. This would complete our wave 4, and from there, if this structure holds, I'd be looking for longs from 50K up into a new all-time high to complete a wave 5. So I think that's the most compelling structure. It's a structure I've been looking at, and there were other ideas for maybe a major high coming in here that look kind of nice as well. And I did in fact take some shorts up here because of those reasons. And I have in fact, as we came into the weekend, I closed my longs. But I'm looking to come back into those long positions because there was ideas of just longing this move up and shorting up into these highs. And there were certainly nice short opportunities and nice long opportunities off a retest of this level. So that was a long setup that I was interested in. But as we started ranging here over the weekend, I got out of those long positions, just waiting for more clarity. And so that was my update. Let's just go here. And so we're going to look at a few ideas. I want to start with the idea I'm most interested in longing, but there's probably some other levels and ideas to keep an eye on as well. All right, give me one moment. All right, so on Friday, there's bullish absorption forming all weekend, and I was interested. My whole plan from these lows was to long into this ascending structure, and as long as this was holding, there's some low time frame updates here, but as long as this ascending structure was holding, those were all longs for me. I was sharing at the time before we made this low, looking for this region at 68,300. And my plan was, trend line seems like a reasonable level to continue longing after TP1 until it breaks. So we're going to look at that on the chart, but this was back, March 26. We got to move down into this level, into this trend line. That's a nice long. And as long as that long is holding, that trend line's holding, I'm bullish locally, and as soon as that starts breaking, and I updated that on Twitter, I'm cutting my longs. And so what I made the decision to do is just get out of my long positions over the weekend and look for setups and not get chopped up over the weekend. So we've obviously been in a choppy range over the weekend. But now I'm looking to get into longs because the bullish absorption is so well defined here. So the main idea for me is, let's go. Oh yeah, I deleted all this analysis because I want to re-pull it on the live stream. Well, the technical level here is just going to be a move down into the 65K region, which is the golden pocket of the move. Let's get rid of this here. Being aware of a clear sign of strength would be to reclaim this weekly candle low. So let's label that the weekly candle low. And what could be reasonable, I meant to click the 1 hour there. What could even be reasonable is to wait for price to reclaim that weekly candle low for a sign of strength. Although I'm going to be open to taking some longs around this level, as if we have a strong reaction here, ton of negative delta, big volume flush, and running a tighter invalidation setup. But I think structurally, this is the most, this is the strongest idea. But we have to keep in mind that we have big bullish divergences forming already against all these lows. So looking for signs of strength around this range is probably still important. But what I would like to see is just price to break this down and get a quick move into this level for a long. From an order flow perspective, it's kind of hard not to justify taking this long if we just take this low and reclaim it with tight invalidation. I don't like it structurally as much, but looking at this as a range, I think it's still reasonable to long locally here. But the setup that I'm almost certain to be taking is this move down to 65K. So these are probably two longs I'd be interested in, even if I'm scalping this into the range, taking a TP1 and letting the rest run. Because let's look at our cumulative volume delta here and why this order flow is getting such a bullish, why I am interpreting it as so bullish. We could come back into some of these higher time frame ideas where we've seen bullish absorption. This is CVD making new lows, new lows, new lows as we range sideways, ending in a really strong impulse, right? So all this is telling us is there is big limit buyers sitting here absorbing all this aggressive selling pressure. That's very important from an order flow perspective. It doesn't mean price has to go up, but we know there's big traders counter trading aggressive selling into this range. And we had the same thing here before the move up. All this aggressive selling, price ranging sideways, ending in a big impulse to the upside. So this was very bullish, and we had it in different forms just all through this region. And we have it now, which is prices ranging sideways, aggressive selling getting absorbed. And the bullish divergence is actually not just forming within the context of this range. It's actually forming in the context against our 60K low. And beyond that, it's actually forming against our 43K low. So what I would say is there's evidence of bullish absorption, at least here on Bybit, on every single time frame that you might measure it on. Locally, medium time frame, high time frame. And so any quick move down into liquidity here for me is an opportunity to take a long, but always using risk management. In fact, you could argue that this is the most bullish order flow has looked on Bybit in months, just to the degree at which we're seeing bullish absorption. I'd have to readjust some settings here to go back to some higher time frame data, but if you would go back and look at this order flow data, you could see clearly that this is significant aggressive selling coming in and significant absorption. And I guess I'll just touch on this fact for one moment, which is it's referred to as bullish absorption as a technical term. And remember, this CVD line is not RSI, has nothing to do with a momentum indicator. It's just giving you a frame of reference of market selling versus market buying. But it's a technical term, and it's technically described as bullish because typically the bigger traders, the institutional traders, are both absorbing buying pressure with limit selling or absorbing selling pressure with limit buying, filling positions over the course of days or weeks to get it. So like, for example, if you want to fill a $200 million long position, you can't just hit market buy. You need aggressive selling coming into a level, lots of market selling over days or weeks, and you need to fill that position with limit buying. And so what we're looking at here is the evidence of a trader, such a trader, filling a big long position. And why we would consider that bullish? Well, who's more likely to win in this exchange? The average retail trader who's coming in, a collection of retail traders coming in every day, selling, getting bearish in this range, aggressive selling, or the larger trader that's holding up hundreds of millions of dollars of selling pressure and has the ability to do so. you're placing your you'd place your bet on the much bigger trader. So that is why all throughout this range, I've viewed this all as bullish. Yes, obviously you don't want to be longing into the all-time highs here, but longing into this range towards all-time highs, longing throughout this consolidation on bullish absorption, and that would still be my thesis here. So what I want to point out though is that just because there's a bullish divergence in order flow locally here does not mean price can't go lower locally, and that's why we have to be looking at some of this structure and still framing technical setups with invalidation. There's no certainties, there's no guarantees, but where are some reasonable places to get long here? And so for me, that most compelling idea is down in this 65K region. But again, it is a region, and I would even be looking I'd be looking at order flow here, and even if we just come run this weekly candle low, maybe even into the 66K region and reclaim it, that's probably a long trigger for me, and I'd probably be willing to take a couple long setups in this region, and if I get stopped out, just re-long. But I think something like this could be reasonable, and no one likes to take a stop, but just the math of this would be, if my setups look something like this, I'm getting 16 to 1 on my risk. So let's just say we end up trading up to 77K, and I take 2 stops and 1 works, and my setups are, let's just call them 15R setups. Well, then I make $12 for every dollar I risked. I lose 2, win 1. These are all regions I'd like to trade around. I'm going to be looking at price as it comes down here, looking at order flow, making the decision, would I enter on this reclaim? Would I wait for lower? And even at this range, low. But of course, you have to be using risk management and always consider the possibility of losing those trades, which I would be happy to put on that risk and take a stop off a setup like that. All right, I'm going to read some comments here. And I know it can be frustrating to some people to say, well, you're basically saying that you don't know where price is going to go. You don't know if we're going to bounce right at 65K, or if we'll get to 65K, or if we'll bounce here. I'm just looking for clean long triggers and using this weekly candle as a frame of reference. And in fact, I don't have to know where price is going to go to set up these trades, or if we're going to bounce here. I just take the trade with structured invalidation, and it either works or it doesn't. And of course, it's important to change your perspective. For example, if this just happens and we just run straight through all these levels, well, this idea doesn't look so good anymore, right? And in that case, I might have faded along, let's say. And by fading, I mean there's no reaction. Price just nukes through the level, and so I'd never mark it into the position. Or I might be taking a stop on a long, which is perfectly fine too. That would be my invalidation of the idea when my stop gets hit. All right, let me read through some comments here. Someone says, I think, and good morning to everyone. Everyone's saying hello, good morning, hello, good, likewise. Someone says, I think price just nukes from here. It is pretty common when monthly candle opens red without a wick and just continues down, plus a weekly R side divergence. Yeah, I guess, in terms of whatever statistics you have on a red opening monthly candle, and by nuke, I don't know what your, nuke to 65K, nuke to 50K, what you're targeting there. But I think lower is certainly reasonable here locally. But for me, the broader context here is still bullish. So I'd be looking for longs on these retracements towards all-time highs. Yeah, someone says, probably a member, weekly low is almost the POC and GP2. Obviously, I've covered that. And yeah, I think the POC Point of control here is right above that level. We can pull it across this range here. Yeah. So the point of control of the range comes in here, right above the weekly candle low. Someone says, hey, how do you put the CVD line on the XO chart? Do you have a video on this? Yeah, you just go into your CVD settings, your delta bar settings, and let me just go over to it. I'll just show you. Oh, I actually can't pull up the settings for some reason on here. Well, you just go to CVD line, and there's an option, CVD line overlay main chart, and show CVD line. So show CVD line, overlay main chart. You just select those options. Someone says, now looks into range. What if just absorb 68K level like fake breakout? I think you're referring to the idea. I think someone else asked a similar question, is what if we just hold this level? Well, in which case you just have to think, okay, well, there is a range here, and there is bullish absorption. So if we get a wick into this level, you have pretty nice clean invalidation looking at this as a range and just trading it as a range, and cut if, you know, the entry trigger would be the range reclaims, you cut if the range breaks down. And then you have to just think of your risk reward in such a setup, which is the idea that we continue ranging here. You get paid 5 to 1, 6 to 1 on your risk, and this is completely reasonable local structure to be trading around within this range, and kind of ignoring some of the higher time frame ideas and just saying, hey, this is a range, we have bullish absorption, why can't I just continue to trade this as a range, and even look for some potential lower high setups for a TP1, remove your risk, maybe into the middle of the range, into the point of control, this region here, and still a nice reasonable local setup. And maybe there's even some kind of descending structure here to look at or something. So I'd be interested in this long setup as well. I think the higher time frame idea of, you know, maybe we do continue ranging here, but if coming down and taking these lows is kind of interesting and the most compelling idea for a move into all-time highs. Okay, let me continue looking at some of these comments. I don't understand the question. Could you talk about this new change means for AI altcoins? Okay, so someone asked about the IBIT data. So this is the BlackRock order flow, BlackRock ETF, and it looks very different than Bybit's. But what we have seen here, so we saw a lot of aggressive longs coming in here in this move, and this was sort of a bit of an anomaly in the IBIT data in terms of how price reacted, which we did get a rejection off of this bullish, or sorry, this was bearish absorption here. I mean, there's no other way to put it. This was very bearish. And we did see a big retracement here. This was our retracement on the chart at the time into, I think it was like 62K, yeah, 62,200. But what was interesting is none of the longs closed. So usually on a retracement like this would flush out a lot of those aggressive longs. We got the retracement, but nothing closed. But what we have seen up here now is bullish absorption forming in the IBIT order flow. So from here, we've started to see some very aggressive selling into this ranging price action. It's been a long weekend. IBIT's not trading right now, so we're going to see as we come into you can see the data ends Thursday, March 28th. We're going to see later today as the markets open how some of this order flow continues to develop. But right now, there's just going to be a bit of a gap in price, and we're going to see how order flow develops. But I'd just say that locally here, we're starting to see bullish absorption in IBIT as well. Someone says, happy April Fool's Day, tell us a joke. I'll have to think on the joke. I was going to say something kind of ridiculous, like why I think Bitcoin's going to be at $1 million next week or whatever, but it's probably not good to make those types of April Fool's jokes. Someone says, what are the chances of holding the previous all-time high at 69,200? I don't know. It's hard to say what the chances are of that. But we're gonna look at a few other things as well here. We're gonna actually look at some altcoins that I think are interesting, and got a request to look at ETH as well. So we'll do that. And we're gonna look at AVAX and a couple other things. Let me go back to TradingView. So I think the interesting ideas here on ETH would be to come like this level's super important from just a horizontal perspective. It'd be really nice to come and get a retest of this. But we'd have to have a pretty big move down on ETH for that to happen. 21%. Let's just imagine this for a second. Yeah, probably not so likely if Bitcoin holds up this bullish absorption. I don't really have an Elliott wave count here on ETH. I think the horizontal structures look pretty clear here on the 4-hour. I did share at the time on Twitter that really this was a longable idea, just if we reclaimed and held up these wicks here. Locally seems relevant, and certainly reasonable long positions here. A bit of a descending trend line structure, a bit of a retest here. This looks like a local 618 move. So all this is relevant. Maybe it would just make sense to look, if we get that move down on Bitcoin, to look for a retest into this level, maybe as an interesting long setup on ETH. And again, probably targeting back up towards the highs here. But one level I've been looking at and waiting for a while, many weeks, is there's two ideas here on AVAX, which is to come break down this ascending structure and come and take some of these local lows. And there's two key ideas I'm willing to look for longs into, which is signs of strength, taking all these lows. And that setup is going to look something like this if I get a trigger, or coming right down to the 786, taking out this impulse low. And both of these have quite nice risk reward, and I think are nice continuation ideas on AVAX. So I have alert set there. I'm going to be looking for some long setups, but I've been waiting for these lows to be taken, you know, all through this as we continued ranging, just setting alerts, waiting. And I noticed today we're coming close to these levels. So yeah, two ideas here. One, just taking these lows, looking for a long setup with a nice reaction, sign of strength, or coming and taking this impulse low on the 4-hour chart into the $45 region. I'd be looking for a long off of that. We could imagine if we do see a little lower on Bitcoin, some of these alts might flush out a little more. Yes, I can take a look at FET. Let's go to the 1 hour on FET. So there's a few ideas here. I mean, I would be very cautious with FET, which we might be in the midst of a flat on FET, but putting in the wave C. We're going to look at this rejection up here. This might look something like this. We'd have to break down this ascending structure a little bit, but here we had just a perfect 618 rejection into this retest here. So we had an initial rejection, price rallied around the 1.237 extension, a rejection. So you can go to the 15-minute chart here. And I'll turn on these pulls so you can see what I'm pulling here. From high to low into the 618, retest of this level, and then just continuation to the downside. So this is a pretty technical rejection. And we actually are at a major high time frame resistance. And I'll kind of explain my thesis about that. And I got to go to the logarithmic chart here. So we have a somewhat of a clean, although we wick through it a little bit, of a horizontal ascending structure just on the daily chart. And there are some ideas here of looking at let me go back to this chart here. We'll go back to the logarithmic. One of the reasons that I was looking for this push up into the, it's kind of hard to pull it exactly, but into the $3.30 range is what you'll notice happens quite often on a chart on a really impulsive move is if you pull this fib into thin air and make this the 618, this pivot, that oftentimes will mark a major high. And so I call it a predictive fib, let's say. And so with the structure of that high time frame logarithmic ascending structure and this idea here with what is clearly a failed breakout here, I think there's some pretty bearish ideas that need to be considered on FET, which I know isn't a popular opinion. Maybe come down and retest these levels. But as crazy as it sounds, I would probably be open to coming down into the $1 region on FET on a higher time frame. We need to just see how this all plays out. Do we start breaking down some of this ascending structure, retest it as resistance, start breaking down these lows, come back down into the origin of this impulse? I think would be a really interesting higher time frame long setup. I'm not saying there's not local long setups, but I did take longs on this move up. I did take a stop on a short on FET up here as price pushed up a little more after this initial rejection, and I took a partial win on a short up here on FET. I shorted this initial move into $3.30 at about 12% rejection, and I got a partial off of that. I think this was the kind of second clean short setup for FET. But yeah, I'd be pretty cautious here personally with longs. But there might be some interesting ideas for local long setups, which would be, to me, something like this. And even just looking to take profits off of that into a lower high. That might also coincide with some kind of retest of the previous range high and this structure here. I might think about FET a little bit more throughout the day here. But yeah, I might be willing to still take some longs in here, but I would probably be looking to take profits and maybe even take shorts on retests of this level. I did wait quite a while for this level. Like, for example, as we were ranging here, I had this idea of pushing up through these highs into that predictive fib idea. For weeks, I waited for weeks to get this push up. And even here, I was saying, I think it's likely that we push up. Still, it's like a 40% move back into these highs. And so I was taking longs for this move up. But yeah, a clear range, but I think there's actually high time frame bearish ideas here on FET that need to be considered. Someone's asking, do I have any alerts set for Doge worth mentioning? I do. I do have some alerts set on Doge. I was scalping Doge a little bit. Was kind of fun, just on the 5-second chart. But I think there's a couple interesting ideas, which is we're just forming a range. Like this pivot low looks quite nice to take. And I'm actually interested in just continuing to trade this as a range until it breaks. There's some ideas for like 9-10 hour setups within this range. And so I'm probably going to be looking to take this trade. And the idea would be come in, sweep, and if we wick and reclaim this, I have my invalidation, I have my long trigger, I get 10-1. And if we get a stronger move and continuation on Doge, I can maybe carry some of that higher. It's like a retest of this previous high. It's a nice idea, I think. The other ideas are just, let's come to the 1 hour time frame. Always want to be aware of wherever a major pivot, high, low, golden pocket is. But the other idea is, of course, I want to have alert set here at the 12-cent region. I don't think it's very likely that we get that, but these are important levels to take. But if we break this down, I wouldn't be surprised to see some of these lows run. And I'd be looking for signs of strength there to take some longs. Yeah, I can take a quick look at Pepe. Give me 1 second here. Let's get rid of the ETH chart. I'm really paying attention mostly to Bitcoin here. I know I have a few Pepe charts here. I want to these lines just marking out all the key horizontals. In fact, the reason they're all marked out is I was just giving it some demonstrations for just simple ideas for what would be signs of strength, signs of weakness on Pepe. And I actually thought it was kind of an interesting long at the lows there for Pepe. Let me pull something up really quickly. All right, one moment. And I'm probably going to clear off the Pepe chart and just take a look at some different structures. So I thought some of the interesting ideas, there's some conversations up at the highs on Pepe here, which was if we could break down some of this ascending structure, we had some local ascending structure here. If we could break some of this down, just coming and taking these pivot lows, reclaiming them, that could be a nice long setup on Pepe in the context of this local price action. But we're having a major rejection from the GP of the move. And so if we want to look at this 4-hour structure, I mean, I would just look at it like this personally, and I'm fine missing longs on Pepe. Down here, nice clean long setup, which would just be a reclaim. We even got a nice little wick into a retest there. This is resistance. This is a range forming. I think if we could come back down and retest this level, that would be an interesting long to me. Or even come back down into this wick, which I'm going to actually move this alert here. These would all be levels I'd look at for longs. But personally, I'm not that interested in longing this local structure after this failed break rejection from the high-low GP resistance. This was the long setup I shared on Pepe that I was most interested in from the highs, but I'd say some of this is all played out. So a retest of this horizontal structure would be interesting. A retest of this wick to me would be interesting. And those are higher time frame ideas. I mean, I'm sure there's clearly low time frame ideas. If you'd gotten into the 15-minute chart here and you were looking to trade some of this internal structure, I mean, this would have been quite a nice clean setup, high volume wick, stopping a bunch of people out of their longs, nice clean reaction, about 6 or 7%. So I'm just not trading Pepe on lower time frames. Do I think doing TA is useless on low cap, sub 500 million market cap, etc.? No, I don't think so. I think it's, TA is, it's not about predicting where price will go so much as it is about identifying the structure in which you would trade. So, why and where are you long? Why and where are you cutting your position? Why and where are you taking profits? So it's more about structure than it is, like, for example, identifying this as a key idea is not predicting that price is going to bounce here and not come into these lows. It's just identifying a range. I could long here. Where might I want to consider getting out of that long? If we can't hold this as support and we can't reclaim and we break it down, well, maybe I don't want to be in that long anymore. So I'm just identifying structure using technical ideas to take those positions. But I mean, I really think there's going to be some really clean opportunities on Bitcoin for some strong asymmetric risk reward setups. And I'm interested in taking those. I think the structures are very clear. I think I've gone over those very well or very clearly. And the targets are really clear. And the order flow is really clear. And the invalidation is very clear. So I'm willing to take some longs. And I'll be willing to take some shorts up at 77K. And if we do get this move up here, and we start to see something like this, and prices ranging, we get something like this, and some bearish order flow locally, I'll be looking to take some shorts. And of course, at the time, people will say how dumb that is, I'm sure, and targeting back into 50K. If we just break out and continue on, then I'm going to get stopped out of some shorts. Yeah, so just running through these comments really quickly. I'm being asked if I could take a look at FTM. I had some local structures marked out here on the lower time frames. I would say this, that I have probably a high time frame bearish view on FTM, and I've shared as much on Twitter. There's some local structures that are kind of interesting for longs, but let me just go to my other FTM chart here. And we need to move to the logarithmic scale. And so this would be my bearish count on FTM. And I know this sounds crazy, but I'd be targeting back into 10 cents as if we see continued weakness here. I shared this around 70 cents on FTM. And the idea here is that this structure just looks very corrective. And let me just get rid of a couple things. So the idea here is, while we are pushing up into our 618 of the move as our C target, there's also some nice key horizontals. And this just needs to be looked at as major high time frame resistance, especially given the corrective look of all of this internal structure. These ABC type moves, 3-wave moves up into a wave C, and this would be a flat as well on a really high time frame. And so I think if we start seeing continued weakness here, I'd be looking for something like this, and I'd be looking to take big swing long positions in this region, or trying to compound into swing long positions from here. Probably update Phantom today on Twitter, because this just looks very on a high time frame. I would say a lot of caution for high time frame bullish ideas if we can't claim this level. I did get kind of hooped out of a short on on Phantom, and maybe I'll just take a quick look at that, how I traded it. Let's get rid of some of this. So anyways, I was aware in this region that we're coming into this major high time frame level, but it's still a very big region of price, right? We're talking 20%. So you have a 20% region that you might want to take some swing shorts on. And so for here, I was looking for this idea of a range forming and shorting a retest of this high. And I actually took longs up into this, multiple longs up into this retest. and I shorted the retest, and I got stopped out here, and I was looking for, after this initial rejection, just to get back short into this move, but became very clear very quickly that I probably should have just taken the retest short again. And you can't really see it on the low time frames, in the 1 hour chart, but we had an initial reaction here. So I had longs up into this impulse. I took profits on the longs, and I took the short on the retest, with a pretty wide stop still. Smaller size, wider stop, up above some of this structure. I got wicked out of that, and I was willing to take another short here, but of course we broke down this level and we retested it, and then we've just broken down from there. So I would have liked to be in that short, but I'll probably be looking to get into some shorts as more structure forms here on some impulses if we get them. And I'd probably be willing to take a short like this. Now, there's just something to be said too about, just because price is coming up to major resistance, let's say, like let's just say this FET idea or this phantom idea, you don't have to try to short the coin, but it might be good if you're in some deep in profit swing positions, to start looking for reasons to take some profits up and looking for some signs of weakness. You can always reopen your positions if there's some signs of strength, but being aware of some of these high time frame structures for some of these coins that have had really strong moves is probably a good idea, right? So you don't end up round tripping deep in profit positions, and you can kind of take some of those high time frame levels into consideration for profit taking, regardless of if you're going to try to structure a short around them. But anyways, and this would be similar to like this Bitcoin long, just because I'd be interested in taking some shorts up if we got this move up to 77K, shorts up here. Say this plays out, you don't have to take the short. You can just take the long and take profits on your long, and maybe remove some of that risk, trail a stop up if you have more bullish ideas, but maybe just being aware of this expanded flat idea for profit taking could be helpful. Yeah, so I think I just kind of wanted to sit and hang out for a little bit, share some of my ideas on Bitcoin. I've taken the weekend mostly off, so coming back and looking at some charts, I'll probably continue to think about some ideas on different alts over the rest of the day. I'll probably share some of those charts and thoughts on Twitter as well. But yeah, I'd say I'm definitely leaning bullish on Bitcoin and looking for some clean long setups, which at this point seem reasonable just to look for lower. If we start forming some more bullish structure here, I might reevaluate waiting for these lows to be taken and try something locally. So maybe I'll wrap up the live stream here. Maybe I'll give another couple minutes for people to ask some questions. Someone says, can you explain the risk management, please? So yeah, let me do that for a second. And I think I have a good example that could be helpful. Give me one moment. All right, so risk management is this idea that all of your trade ideas have invalidation. And so you're always defining your risk. And part of that is how you size into your positions. So for example, let's just say that you have a $1,000 account or a $10,000 trading account. You might say, I'm never going to risk more than 1 to 2% of my account on one single trade. So if I have a $1,000 account and I'm going to risk, let's just say $20 on this, which is 2% of my trading account, I risk $20 to make a 17 multiple of that. I mean, it's just easier. You can do simpler math. 10R would be I risk $20 to make $200 on my account, or 20R would be I risk $20 to make $400 on my account. But the most you're going to lose is $20. And so you have this asymmetric risk reward. And even if you take a loss, you've lost $20 on your $1,000 trading account. And here's an example of a member in the Discord sort of started discovering some of the benefits of risk management. So they were in, they joined the Discord, and they at the time were in a Pepe long that was deep underwater, and they ended up getting out of that, but there wasn't really any risk management, and they're maybe a little concerned. Said, I want to share something with you. After my Pepe round trip, I made some better decisions to proper risk management using $200 test account. I managed to make around $50 today. The truth is, with proper risk management, I feel more comfortable trading with less emotion involved, because emotions can be tricky. As you know, I'm always asking questions, but I need to keep improving my skills. Also want to say sorry to Lucky Chart if I was arrogant. I don't think I ever took anything he said as arrogant, but anyway, so he took some, for example, a short on FTM. Up $300 there, risk-free. Here he says, I'm in love with that risk management and adjusting and removing risk. So here's somebody who didn't necessarily have these concepts of invalidation, risk management, predefining how much you could possibly lose on the trade and being completely okay with that. And so there was sort of an evolution here of, again, shorted FET at $3.28, but using risk management, defining that risk. And so the idea is, it's not scary to take a short or a long at a key level if you're using risk management. And I think there's one more post here, just a nice little evolution of a new member kind of discovering this idea of like predefined risk. And so he took another short up here on FET at $3.40 and said, I don't care if I lose. I took big profits off of my last short. So he was in one short, took profits in another short, and just defining that risk. It's a really powerful concept, which is, you'd be surprised at how quickly. We just had another member just post, he did a challenge for 1 month, paper trading, risking no more than 2% of his account per trade. And on Bitcoin, he doubled his account in this month of price action. So risking no more than 2%. So this is where people like don't understand. Say you're just hodling, prices move 20%. That someone who's trading short, long, short, long, short, long, and using risk management, asymmetric risk reward, is possible, risking no more than 2% of their account on a single trade idea. They've doubled their account in this ranging price action. So that would be like your goal as a trader, right? And here in this range, for example, you might be in a situation where you're trading the range locally and you risk, let's just make it a 4-hour trade here. You risk $20 of your account to make $80. So you risk 20, you make 80, and then maybe you try a short here. I'm just giving an example, back down into the lows of the range. You risk 20 to make, just to make it easy, 4-hour risk. Make 20, risk 20 to make 80. So now you've made $160 off of a combined $40 of risk. And then you take the long again at the range lows. You risk 20 to make another 80. and you get stopped out. So you've won 2, you've lost 1, you've made 80, 80, and you've lost 20. And then let's just say you take your next trade as well, and you trade down here. You risk 20, and it doesn't work either, so you've lost 40. So you're at 50% win rate, right? But your account balance is up, and you could in fact lose your next trade and your next trade and still be up, based on a series of trades using risk management with well-defined invalidation and entry triggers. But anyways, yeah, I think I'm going to end the live stream here, just scanning through the comments. Hopefully that makes sense. I have some videos on risk management that are a little bit more in depth. I think there's actually a free video on my YouTube. So if you go to the educational content, there's a bigger breakdown on, or a more in-depth breakdown on concepts of risk management. All right, chat to you guys later. I know this sort of dragged on here. Just wanted to hang out and chat for a little bit, give my thoughts on Bitcoin, why I'm looking for longs, and I think there's going to be some nice, clean setups as we come into the week here.